You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode.
Before we get started on this episode, here's a not-so-short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster nor the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak to a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's mold education courses, such as Mold 101 and the Mycotoxin Prevention Kit, by going to cnccontractorservices.com. Again, check out his mold education courses at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, you're listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with myself, Steve Worsley. We have my wife, Cassandra. How goes it?
Good.
Just another day in paradise,
Yes,
right?
it is. What is it? What is on our wall? Living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. So anyhow, I hope all of you are doing well. Today's topic is another topic that I have to talk about quite often with clients, and it's containing toxic mold. When you hear that, what do you think I'm talking about?
Just trying to squeeze it into something that keeps it from spreading.
Yes. So what I'm talking about is, let's say one of our listeners has a mold issue in their basement in a spare bedroom that they never use.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do to contain that?
Well, lots of people think they can just close the door in that spare bedroom that they never use, and the mold won't go anywhere. It'll just stay in that room, and so long as they don't go in that room, they'll be fine.
Exactly.
Which is not true.
And we just mentioned it. You have a friend or coworker that has a mold issue, and they just, what did they do? Close the door to the basement?
Yeah. And I think lots of people do that. I think lots of people say, hey, just don't go down there, or just don't go in that room until I'm ready to actually deal with it. Let's just close our eyes and pretend like it's not there.
Okay. So let's address what the consequences of that would be. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in a basement because of the stack effect, meaning heat rises, if it's a toxic mold colony down there, the mold and mycotoxins are naturally going to find their way upstairs.
Well, yeah. And if the mold colony is feeding on the sheetrock, for example, and you have black mold feeding on the sheetrock that you can't necessarily see, then it's going to just start feeding up to the next level sheetrock, won't it?
It could. It would follow. So one thing to keep in mind for our listeners, you would have to have an active water leak for it to keep expanding.
Okay. So the water would have to be present.
Yeah. And if that went away, it would go into a dormant state.
So literally, if you have a main floor kitchen leak underneath the sink that you know nothing about, then the floor underneath the kitchen sink is generating a mold colony.
Yeah, let's talk about if the kitchen was right above us, because we're in the basement.
Yes, then it would just come down here is my point.
Exactly.
Because the water's coming down.
But do you think we would see it?
No, because it would be feeding on things we can't see.
Right. So we're looking at a HVAC register.
Yep.
Let's just say that's where the leak is. Obviously, if there was a register there, the water would drip out of that register. But let's just say there's not one there. What the water would do, it follows the path of least resistance. So let's just say naturally there's a tiny low spot where the light is in the ceiling. It would run to there.
Okay.
And then eventually come down through the light. But to our right, what is that? The exterior wall, right?
Yeah.
It would go to that exterior wall and probably run down the wall and end up at the floor level where we're sitting.
Wow. That's not good.
Think about if it was just a slow drip leak. Mm-hmm. You could have mold that just is everywhere and you never noticed it.
And you'd never know because it's not on the visible side of your wall.
Exactly. It's hidden.
That makes a ton of sense. So literally, you can't really, I mean, I guess that's the whole point. You cannot really contain a mold infestation, meaning like just quarantine it off and do nothing about it.
Right.
If moisture is still an active factor.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
Okay.
But let's just say, so we're talking about the office that we're in. Mm-hmm. Let's say that window leaked. We had a sprinkler line that broke. There's a window well outside of it, filled full of water. We caught the leak. We saw it. The sheetrock got wet. It started to grow mold. Mm-hmm. That's a totally different scenario.
Okay.
You could try, and I use the term try, you could try to contain that. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
I would come in here and I would put tape over the HVAC register that we just talked about. Mm-hmm. I'd put plastic. Now, once again, it has to be dried out. If you put plastic over something that's wet, you're going to trap all that moisture in there and make it even worse.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure it's dry.
Mm-hmm.
The way you would do that's obviously with the equipment we use, moisture meters, infrared cameras, all that stuff. You could cover that up with plastic. Then, where the door is that comes into this office, I would put plastic over the doorway and tape it. And then above that door is just a grill for air ventilation from the family room into this office. I would tape that.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. So really, there are a couple pieces there that to me are really, really interesting. If you seal something off, but you also seal the moisture in it, you're just creating more of a mold issue.
Yeah, because it won't be able to dry out.
Okay, so the drying out is a key factor to a containment.
The first thing you have to do is discover the defect. So the explanation I just gave, it was a broken sprinkler line. We identified the defect. We fixed the defect. So we stopped the bleeding. We're not concerned that, it could always break again, but we're not concerned that we're trapping any moisture. We waited for it to dry out, all of that. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
But if you go to the scenario you were talking about, it's a kitchen sink. You wouldn't know about any of it till there's massive mold issues.
No, you wouldn't. And then let me ask you a different question about containing toxic mold. Even if you could contain a mold infestation and it's dry, that does not prevent that mold colony, if it's toxigenic mold, from spewing mycotoxins, right?
Exactly.
So you might be able to contain the toxic mold colony, but you can't contain the mycotoxins.
Well, that's kind of a complex question because if the mycotoxins are free to spread, then so would the mold spores.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I guess the moral of the story is with that is for the most part, you can't really contain it and be for sure. Now, if we're talking about, we talked about what you could salvage last week. We talked about a chair that your mom had since you were like 7. Mm-hmm. Let's say that was full of mold.
Yeah.
You could easily contain that. Does that make sense? We could wrap it in plastic.
But if you wrap it in plastic and the mold is still spewing mycotoxins, it's going to get out of
it would be in the plastic.
It would be in the plastic. Okay.
Because we're using 6 mil plastic.
So 6 mil plastic will contain
it's
okay.
Not permeable.
Okay. So, but what I'm hearing you say is containing any form of toxic mold is an extremely short-term strategy until you can get somebody qualified in to fix the issue.
Exactly. Okay. But the big difference is we're able to contain that entire chair.
Yes. Whereas you can't contain an entire room, per se.
Exactly. If it's behind the walls, think about any voids that are in this wall, the room adjacent to it. Does that make sense? So if it's in a wall cavity, unless you actually set up a true containment and create negative air, you're not going to be able to contain it.
So what about the people who find a mold issue and they say, okay, nobody's going to go in that room. We're going to keep the door closed and we're going to run fans.
Run fans in what manner?
Dry it out and then maybe run an air purifier or scrubber to get the mold gone. Is that effective?
No.
Why
No,
not?
well, first and foremost, you're running fans, so you're changing the air pressures in that area of the home.
Okay.
So you're kind of stirring everything up to begin with.
Okay.
To better explain it, the reason why when we're doing mold remediation, we establish the containments is pretty much the first thing we establish. Then we create negative air.
And why do you create negative air?
To pull all the air out of the contaminated area, and then it's ducted to the exterior.
Oh, so negative air pulls it away from the house and somewhere out.
Well, away from the containment.
Away from the containment. Okay.
Yeah, so just to kind of explain to our listeners, as far as air pressures, and they change like 7 to 10 times an hour. They change from neutral, meaning there's nothing. Mm-hmm. Then it can go to negative, which means it's pulling the air out of the containment.
Okay.
Or it could go to positive, which means you're kind of pumping up the air in the containment and preventing anything from coming in.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So to go back to your question about setting up fans, depending on our containments, we sometimes have to we cut a hole in the containment and put an air filter in there for makeup air. Meaning you have to have the air from somewhere.
Yeah.
That's why, like, on an HVAC system, you have that return air grill. You have to have air coming in. Okay. Think about being in
you're
a
circulating.
balloon.
You're circulating the air. That's what it is. You're circulating it.
Well, it has to have enough air to create the negative air. If you don't have makeup air, like I just referred to, we could be pulling air, depending on where our containments are, we could be pulling air from the attic or from the crawl space.
That's true.
So you have to have enough air in that space to keep the airflows doing what they're supposed to do. That's kind of something I wasn't going to really get deep into, but that's why it's so complex.
Well, and I think, so would you, in your opinion, should people be trying to, if they have a mold issue in their home, should they be trying to contain toxic mold themselves?
No, we always recommend professionals.
Okay. Because they could actually end up making it worse than better.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like setting up fans or even an air scrubber. If you don't know what you're doing, it's probably not.
And an air purifier in these kinds of situations is useless, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I see it a lot of times with my clients. They go out and spend thousands of dollars on air purifiers and buy 6 or 7 of them. If you don't address what we call the bleeding, which is the mold infestation or what caused it, you're just spinning your wheels.
And what things, if somebody finds a mold problem and they're like, okay, I just want to contain it long enough to get an IEP in the room to see this in the next week or two, what things should they not do when trying to contain toxic mold?
Turning on fans and putting air scrubbers and air purifiers in there.
And also like sweeping up things, right? Because you're stirring up.
Yeah. I mean, you should. So let's just say there's a mold problem in this room. Mm-hmm. And Steve can't get out there, or whoever you're hiring can't get out there for a week. Depending on what it is, it would depend on how we would address that. But let's just say it's in this room. I would tell our listeners, close that HVAC register.
Okay.
Because that's a void. You would close that grill that's above the door. Mm-hmm. So that's just for air to flow in. That's what our makeup air is, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Like if I set up an air scrubber in here and I didn't seal that, it would just be pulling the air throughout the house into this room. Okay. But anyhow, to go back to what we're talking about, you would tape that. Then you could easily just tape the door. But at the bottom of the door, it's kind of a big gap. But you can put plastic up and tape it. Okay. And that just kind of seals off.
So it keeps everything in this room until an IEP gets out there.
It tries to.
It tries to, but it's not necessarily 100%.
Exactly.
So what is your call to action for people if they're listening to this and they go, oh my goodness, this is like, I can't just close the door and it's not going to affect me and I need to bring in an IEP, and even if I try to seal it, it may not really seal it. Like, what's your call to action for people?
Call in a professional.
Yeah.
Like, it's simple for me.
And it doesn't have to be that you have to wait weeks. Like, they can go to cnccontractorservices.com. They can reach out to you. They can book a mold consultation. You can do it through a Zoom meeting. Like, it doesn't just because you need support from an IEP doesn't mean you're necessarily going to wait weeks.
Exactly. No, and you shouldn't. I mean, if I have a client that reaches out and it's an urgent thing, then we can figure out a way. If I'm on a project, maybe I'll do the VPA in the evening, or even if I'm fully booked, we'll figure out a way to get your concerns addressed. But you should get a professional involved.
Absolutely.
All right. Like my wife just said, we have consultations, VPAs, all of that's at cnccontractorservices.com. We appreciate all you listeners. Have a great week.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're worried about mold or indoor air quality in your home but don't know where to start, CNC Contractor Services has you covered. A virtual property assessment gives you real-time expert guidance on what's going on in your living environment, all from the comfort of your home. Whether you're buying, building, or just want peace of mind, visit cnccontractorservices.com to learn more about scheduling your VPA with Steve today.